Welcome into CyHawk Talk here on a Sunday, looking back at Iowa State getting off the schneid, beating TCU down in Fort Worth, and the Hawkeyes narrowly missing out on a chance to upset Oregon. And I hate to say I told you so, but that's exactly what I predicted on Saturday. Or that's exactly what I predicted was going to happen on Saturday. I made that prediction on Wednesday. You remember my three headlines? Oh, so close. No November magic and the Justin Herbert experience. And by golly, if all three of those things did not come true on Saturday, I'm not going to toot my own horn too much here because it was really an unfortunate loss for the Hawkeyes, and they were oh so close. But Ben, how close an eye were you keeping on what was going down in Kinnick Stadium while you were watching the Cyclones get that crucial win, get back in the win column, and become bowl eligible?
Yeah, I think everybody in the state was kind of, curious about what was happening in Kinnick Stadium. I know those two games were both coming down to the very end at the same time. I didn't have a multi-view option on my TV, but I was tempted to flip over, from the Iowa State game that was in the throes of the fourth quarter to see what the heck was happening in that super close, super contested game in Kinnick. And I did manage to flip over just in time to see the game-winning field goal for Oregon. But man, I feel bad for all of the football connoisseurs across the state. They couldn't watch both at the same time.
Yeah, it was an incredible game. I have a TV over here behind me. I had that one on the Iowa State game. Maybe saw two plays the entire time because I was locked in um, off in front to my left here where I had the Iowa game pulled up. Thanks to Jim Nelson from the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, by the way, for covering for me this weekend. We're still on baby watch. No kiddo yet, but we're getting close here. 5 days past the due date at this point, so should be any second now, right? We'll see. We might be into next week before deep into next week before anything happens at this rate. But yeah, I was locked in on that Iowa game, and it went basically as close to as I thought it was going to happen, like going to go as possible. I was on satellite radio before the game with a show in the Ryan Hickey show in New York, and I said, I think that this is going to be a close game. I think Oregon's going to win, and I think it's going to come down to the last possession, and that's exactly what happened. But I thought it was really impressive what Mark Gronowski was able to do to lead the Hawkeyes into the lead in the final 2 minutes of the game. First lead of the game that they had was in the final 2 minutes, and I thought that was really impressive. And it kind of reminded me, going back to the second week of the season, my number one takeaway from the Iowa State loss was that drive, that final drive that Iowa did nothing with. They got Gronowski got sacked twice, and got a heave up on fourth down that fell incomplete. And it just, really had nothing going on offensively the whole day. And it was kind of a repeat of what had happened in the U Albany game that they were able to pull out thanks to 53 rushing attempts on the ground. I wrote after that game that drive, that final drive, had the potential to be defining for Gronowski's career at Iowa if things continued and trended that direction. That maybe that might just be the drive you point to and be like, yeah, we should have known right then that it wasn't going to get any better. And that was wrong. I was totally off on that. And they certainly turned it around almost immediately. Things got clicking against UMass. He had a big game against Rutgers, and then the Indiana game where he had him in position to beat the Hoosiers, and then this last 3 game stretch before the Oregon game where they dominated, and he was kind of the heart and soul of the offense. And so I think that the drive that's actually going to define his career at Iowa will be that go-ahead drive against Oregon. Leads them 93 yards in 12 plays, makes the throws when he needs to, and then runs it in. As you would expect, he runs it in to become the all-time quarterback rushing touchdown single season leader at Iowa with 12, and also breaks the Big Ten record for most consecutive games with a rushing touchdown by a quarterback. So I think that is going to be the drive you look back on, and like that was Mark Gronowski at Iowa. He has his own legacy. He has his own career at South Dakota State that's defined by national championships and being the FCS MVP. But when you ask what was Mark Gronowski at Iowa, I think all you'd have to do is show somebody that final drive, that go ahead drive, and be like, they lost this game, but man, this guy is a winner, and he could put this team on his back and be that heart and soul leader that they needed him to be. So I think that's the number one takeaway. And then the number two takeaway, I'm not letting Ben talk at all today, apparently, but the number two takeaway was the defense just didn't make the just in the moments that they needed the defense to step up this year, they couldn't make the stops. I think about against Iowa State, couldn't stop, you know, the Cyclones from getting to field goal range, getting Kyle Conradi just close enough to break every Hawkeye fan's hearts. Against Indiana, couldn't make the stop against the Hoosiers with a backup quarterback in the game. Gave up the long touchdown to Surratt on the slant route. Sent the house, and then Fernando Mendoza just gets the ball off in time. And then against Oregon, you get the lead late in the game, don't get the 2-point conversion, which was close. Ball got tipped. Clips up on my Twitter account if you want to go look at it, where Mark Gronowski kind of explains what happened on that play. But you got the 1-point lead, minute 51 left. You've been able to stop Oregon basically all day. You have prevented them from being an explosive offense, and they get within field goal range within like the first minute of having the ball. And at that point, it's just them burning the clock to set up the field goal that they need to hit. And at that point, your only hope is, maybe it's a bad snap. Maybe the conditions cause the holder to lose his grip and the kicker just boots it right into the back of his blockers. But at that point, I didn't go look at the ESPN win probability graph, but I'm sure Iowa was above 90% when they scored that touchdown and just immediately straight down to the other side. And Mark Gronowski in the postgame press conference said, when I scored that touchdown, I really thought we'd won the game in that moment. And so the defense just wasn't able to hold up. And that's been uncharacteristic of the defense in previous years, but it's kind of what this defense became this year, is really solid, but man, they couldn't make the clutch stops.
I read that quote from Gronowski that he really thought that they had the game won. And at that point, your mind goes to all the possibilities we talked to last week on the show, where the college football playoff is an opportunity, the Big Ten championship, everything is on the table. Now, with this close loss, Ethan, what's left on the table for Iowa?
Yeah, I think that going into the week, I pointed out that the ESPN Football Power Index had 2.5% chance to win out, and a 7.1 or 7.6% chance to make the playoffs. So clearly, there's a scenario that algorithm is finding where they didn't beat Oregon or they didn't win out, and they still made the playoffs. So, I'll discuss it more in our grade segment. The playoffs are not completely out of the question, but it's out of the question in 99.9999% of chances. I think that this is an Iowa team that's looking to make a prestige bowl, maybe a Pop-Tarts bowl level
Yeah.
kind of game. I know the Rose Bowl was there last night, so we'll see if they're able to get a cool bowl, a big bowl that they can go to. It's certainly going to be more prestigious than the Music City Bowl last year if they're able to win out, and I don't see any of these next three teams beating the Hawkeyes. Just from what I've seen from USC, Michigan State, and Nebraska this year, I think Iowa's better than all three of those teams, which is kind of why yesterday probably stings that much more. You felt pretty confident about those final three opponents. Oregon was the big obstacle to clear, and you had it. You had the game won and just couldn't finish it out. And I'd like to clarify on the 24-yard or 27-yard pass from Dante Moore to Benson over TJ Hall. All the people who know said that TJ Hall had great coverage on that play. So I'm not going to say like he made a bad play, he lost the game or anything like that. I just think it was an incredible throw from Dante Moore to the receiver. And I think that Oregon just made all the plays that they needed to in that final drive. So I'm not going to go out here and say, I know it sounded like I said that the defense lost the game. It's just that they couldn't come up with the clutch stop. And that is as much to do with Oregon as it has to do with the defense as well. But I think it's going to be a prestige bowl that Iowa's playing for this year. And that's that's all the more you can hope for at this point now that the Oregon game's out of the way.
Boy, I couldn't believe that throw from Dante Moore. Just an NFL throw in an NFL moment. And good offense beats good defense in that situation, the old football adage. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss about this Oregon game, Ethan?
I'd also like to circle back to another bad take I had maybe earlier where I said, we can't trust this Iowa field goal unit anymore. I got a little bit more context around what happened against Penn State and maybe a little bit more context around what happened for the field goal unit early in the season. And they hit a 58-yarder last night in really bad conditions. And I saw an opposing fan say Drew Stevens made that look like a PAT, the 58-yarder. And, I think that there is a lot of confidence in that field goal unit, and I think it is justified. I just think, maybe earlier in the season, the operation was not great. And we saw the punt operation, a lot of people like to say cost them the game yesterday because it ultimately led to the safety. You lose by 2 points. It's a easy math to do. Obviously, there was a lot more to do with losing that game than just a safety in the first quarter on the second drive. But I think that the special teams have just been so excellent at Iowa for so long that it's really weird to see it not be perfect. And what you're seeing is, maybe they don't have the best long snapper in the country this year like they did last year in Luke Elkin, who was the first ever long snapper All-American last year. So it's you can trust the field goal unit. They've earned that. That was a bad take by me earlier. Speaking of great takes, Ben, you had some great ones on Wednesday predicting Iowa State to lose. What happened that led to the TCU loss and the Iowa State win?
Everything about this game pointed to another Iowa State loss, Ethan, I think. Iowa State was outgained 432 to 272. Rocco Becht sets new lows in completions, completion percentages, yards. He throws 2 picks, 1 touchdown. You think, how in the world did Iowa State win this game? I think that's the question TCU fans are asking. And the answer is this was just a Matt Campbell culture win. That's kind of the message I think everybody was repeating is this was a Matt Campbell win. Somehow, some way, Iowa State finds a win. They finally get some of these small little breaks that Campbell and this team have been desperate for. And, they didn't give up. Iowa State came in on a 4-game losing streak. They, got down. TCU scored, 17 unanswered points. And Iowa State just gutted it out, man. Just an impressive display of toughness and resolve to continue fighting until the very end. And if it sounds like I'm just reiterating all of the coaching points you hear every coach mention every week, then I mean, that's exactly right, because that's what it took to beat TCU.
How big? I saw that Aiden Flora had a big punt return, I believe, in this game. How big was that in terms of swinging momentum for the Cyclones? Because I know when that I'm locked into a game, you can kind of feel it when it's like, oh, that's the play that's going to kind of change the outcome of this one. And it felt like for the Iowa game, that was the Caden Weegan fumble in the third quarter. They were, on the Oregon 16-yard line going in to score, and then turned the ball over to Oregon. Was that kind of the play that turned the tide for the Cyclones, or was that the one that sealed the win for the Cyclones?
I think it did both because, 79 yards for Aiden Flora. Man, he was so good early in the season in that punt return role. Got banged up, wasn't able to do it. And then to get him back with boom, such a flash, he's able to make this big 79-yard touchdown. And Ethan, that play both swung the momentum and sealed the game because it didn't feel like Iowa State was necessarily going to be able to march down the field and get a go-ahead touchdown. It felt like they might need something to happen on special teams, and it certainly did. So that game, that play just came at such a good time for the Cyclones. Iowa State's offense had actually just scored, a touchdown after going essentially 3 quarters without scoring. So they get the touchdown, the defense gets a stop, and then immediately the punt goes to Flora, who takes it to the house. So lickety split, the Cyclones, went from way down in this game to in the lead, and that's exactly what needed to happen. It turned on a dime for the Cyclones. Welcome back, Aiden Flora.
If I'm not mistaken, Iowa State looking at a bye week this Saturday. Is that correct?
They are, Ethan, the third bye week, and
How
boy,
big how big was it to get a win and get back on that in that win column going into the final bye week of the season?
I think it has to be. I think it has to be. I mean, these guys, they just desperately needed something uh, positive going into this bye week. I can't imagine what the vibes would be like going on a 5-game losing streak for the first time since 2022. I mean, you talk to these guys after the games, Ethan, and everybody's just down, and it's just a tough scene. But I think they, have some life injected in it. Now you look at, hey, they can beat KU, a rival at home, and then they can go on the road and beat Oklahoma State. And, 8 wins certainly isn't what anybody hoped for at the start of the season. But considering a 4-game losing streak in the middle of that, that wouldn't be such a bad alternative. Something to get the positive momentum back for next season. And, the big thing is Iowa State did it without all of its defensive players. And, they were down 6 guys before the start of the game, lost more as the game went on. It was just hit after hit. And the Cyclones showed that resolve. So I think it certainly does a lot for the locker room. We've been hearing the same thing throughout. I think that's Iowa State's coaching. Like Iowa State players are never going to tell you, hey, it's really hard to go out there and play on Saturday. But I think the win definitely makes it a little bit easier.
And maybe Coach Campbell going to be a fan of yellow pants moving forward.
Gold pants, as I was corrected by a couple Cyclone fans. But that's stupid, Cyclone fans. Come on. That's clearly yellow. Am I wrong? I mean, it's clearly yellow.
Well, I
Um,
think that you can you have to call it gold because aren't the official colors cardinal and gold?
they are. They are officially cardinal and gold. First time since 2016, Ethan. I swear the equipment staff did it just to troll with me. I released the big story on the all black uniforms and how Iowa State hasn't worn gold since 2016, and boom, there they come out, the gold pants. So certainly a look that drew some mixed reviews. A lot of people happy for it. I really think they're on a 4-game losing streak. What the heck do you have to lose? I think Campbell probably said, hey, why not ride with them? Let's go with it. As he told Kyle Conradi before he made the kick, F it. Let's go with the yellow pants. And he's superstitious with these things. So I'm guessing that's probably what happened. And heck, maybe we'll see him again.
We'll get more information from the fake news Iowa State media right after this.
So just, okay, but it was there, so it was a really tough, hard-fought game, two really good teams, competing, and, certainly hurts to lose a game. But really it's these kinds of games I think are emblematic of November football, especially in our conference. We get two teams getting after it pretty good. So, all those things that we thought coming into the game really certainly panned out to be true. Had a lot of respect for Oregon's talent, and they're a very well-coached team, have been all year, and they, so we knew we had a big challenge on our hands there. And then, all those cliches you hear forever in football, they say around because they mean something, and it is a game of inches. Details do matter, and I think that's really what it came down to in a lot of ways tonight. So, we came up a little short, but really proud of our team's effort and the way they competed. Certainly, tough loss, in a lot of little things that we're going to have to figure out do a little bit better at. But I think the most important thing for our team is they understand that there's a lot to be proud of. They're going to see a lot of really good efforts on film, a lot of things they did during the course of the game that were, really impressive. And, I think all the coaches are really proud of the effort everybody put into it, the way we responded several times in the football game. And, we still have a good team, and we got, plenty of football in front of us. So we'll go back, critique this thing, do what we can, see what we can improve on next week. And that'll be the biggest challenge is getting everybody back on their feet here after we get through tomorrow. So losing stuff never been fun, and that's certainly the case here. Again, credit to our opponents, a really, really good football team, and they played well tonight. Last two things, just want to also thank our fans. You guys are all in the stadium, and that's typical of November football here. To our fans, were outstanding. The weather could have been a challenge, and they, you'd never know with them. They did dampen their enthusiasm. They certainly are a good start to finish, and we appreciate that. It's a big edge for us. And then John Campbell's around here somewhere, right? Where's John at? All right, good. I was told this is your last.
He's the final one, yeah.
I thought you already said that once, but I just want to take a minute and just, applaud John, and the job he's done for a lot of years. So.
Welcome back to CyHawk Talk here on a Sunday, grading Iowa State's performance in a win over TCU and Iowa's performance in a loss to the Oregon Ducks. Ben, go ahead and get into your grades from that exciting win.
Rocco Becht, I'm sorry, my friend, you get a D. It is it's only not an F because Iowa State won the game, and I think wins are a quarterback stat. Rocco had the key run at the end of the game that almost essentially sealed it. There was just 28 seconds left by the time the Cyclones kicked the ball away to TCU. So credit to Rocco Becht for making the play in the fourth quarter that won the game. That's what he's done all season. That's what he has done at the start of the season, and that's why he saves himself from an F, because those statistics, we went through them earlier on the show, were not good at all. Iowa State's special teams gets a B. And if it was just Aiden Flora, we're talking about A+, because he made the play to win the game at the end. Just such a key play that the Cyclones had been desperately searching for. But there were also two kind of sketch 2-point conversions early in the game. The first one, I think Iowa State tried to catch the Horned Frogs by surprise. They snap it to Benjamin Bramer, who kind of does a sprint right, trying to get to the edge, and it was completely blown up. And then later in the game, the Cyclones were kind of chasing some of those points, so they go with another wacky 2-point play, and the backup quarterback Connor Mobley is decked for a loss, trying to get around the left side. So Iowa State got creative with its 2-point conversions. I think the play calling, being aggressive all game, is what won Iowa State the game. But I can't give it an A for the special teams completely. And then the heart of this Iowa State defense gets an A. This defense was unbelievable. TCU is the 4th leading scoring team in the Big 12, and Iowa State essentially shut them down. 3 takeaways, 2 interceptions, and a fumble, and then Iowa State gets a 4th down stop. Was everything you can ask for a unit that was so banged up entering the game. We saw Patterson, a freshman, come up big. Drew Sturgis forced a fumble or recovered a fumble. Some of these young guys on the back end just really stepping up. An impressive game from Iowa State's defense that showed so much heart to get the win against TCU.
It may not look pretty now for Cyclone fans in the win-loss column, but those moments will be big for those young guys later in their careers, and I'm sure that this is just building the next great Cyclone season. So maybe not all is lost in a season that has gone sideways for the Cyclones. It's interesting how you graded Rocco Becht, because as I get into my grades, it's kind of a similar way that I graded Mark Gronowski. I gave him a B+. Could have been an A+ if Iowa won the game, and honestly, he had nothing to do with the fact that they lost the game, leading that go-ahead drive in the final 2 minutes, getting them the lead, and then the defense wasn't able to hold on. So, nothing was in his control in getting this B+ versus an A-. So maybe a little bit unfair grading for me. But he did not have the most electric game through the air. Still another game under 150 passing yards. Struggled to complete the ball early. He was 1 of 4 at one point for 3 yards and missed Jacob Gill pretty badly on 2 third-down plays on their first 2 drives, leading to punts. And both those punts were pretty poor operations. The one led to the safety, and one got partially blocked because the snap was off. But outside of that, he made all the winning plays on that final drive and got them in position to win the game. So it's going to be a B+. If they gotten the win, would have been an A+. And on that clutch defense, I'm going to give a D-. Kind of like in the Indiana game, the defense played really well for 80% of this game. It was just in 2 clutch moments they kind of dropped the ball. And I'm thinking Oregon before the half were able to get in position for a field goal, kicked a field goal to take a 12-7 lead going into the into halftime, and then same scenario at the end of the game, we're able to drive 80 yards or 50 yards to get into field goal range and kick the game-winning field goal with 3 seconds left. And then for whatever reason, it just seemed like the Hawkeyes maybe weren't prepared for what happened on the kickoff, so they weren't able to even throw that last-second heave or try the lateral play. It kind of hit the up man on the kickoff, and he fell on it, or he got a hold of it, and then was immediately encountered by guys, and at that point the time had ticked off the clock. But yeah, the clutch defense just wasn't where it needed to be for Iowa to pull that game out. Gave up 6 crucial points in a game that was decided by 2. So if you're looking at other reasons why the safety might not have been the end-all be-all yesterday, it was those 6 points conceded in the final 5 seconds of 2 halves. And then the last grade, Iowa's playoff chances is going to be a D-. It should probably be an F, but because there is that unlikely scenario where other teams lose, Iowa wins out, looks really impressive in so doing, and the committee really values 2 super quality losses to Oregon and Indiana. I'm talking like SEC, ACC teams just fall apart down the stretch here in these final 3 weeks of the season. That's the scenario. The Big Ten cannot fall apart. You need Oregon to win out. You need Indiana to win out. You probably need Ohio State to win out too, because those need to remain really high quality losses. You probably need Iowa State to figure some things out too. You need USC to only lose to you, right? These are all the things that need to happen for this unlikely scenario to occur. So that's why it's a D-. Should be an F. Don't get your hopes up. Probably not happening. You're certainly not hosting a playoff game at this point, but there's still that tiny chance. Like if we're still doing the playoff-ometer, it would almost be at the very end there. But it's going to be a D- from me. That'll do it for our Sunday Rewind show. Same disclaimer as last Sunday. Might not have a show this Wednesday. Probably more likely to not have it this Wednesday. But if no kid arrives, we will have the show. We appreciate you guys watching. Comment your thoughts on either of these games and email us. Shoot us an email. Mine's ethan.petrick@wcfcourier.com. Ben, what's your email?
Ben.hutchins@lee.net. throw me some conversation. I'd love to have it.
We'd love to chat with you guys, get a real idea of where the fans are at. We think we have a good idea, but sometimes we can be completely off base. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next time.